Good afternoon, sir. Today, I welcome you for giving me the incredible opportunity to interact with you from Trump tariff to US-China relationships and geopolitical world order. Today, as I said, I have the amazing opportunity to interact with Faisal Ahmed, who is a professor of trade and geopolitics at FORE School of Management. We are here to listen his detailed perspectives, given his expertise on China's leading expert, Trump tariffs, and geopolitics in the Indo-Pacific region. So, sir, as we see that there are a lot of geopolitical world order and there are a lot of contentious issues that are going on. So, given China's core ambitions in the Indo-Pacific, what could be the stable concession or a bargain strategy that you think that China could employ in the region to exert its dominance?
Okay, see, what China's strategic concerns today is largely related to United States. For example, that China wants to deprive the United States of a role in the Indo-Pacific region primarily and other regions as well, like in the Middle East or in Africa even. So, in terms of the strategic issues, the way things have evolved, like we have seen Quad, we have seen right from Obama's time, we have seen the Asia pivot, the Quad came in, then we have seen Indo-Pacific Economic Framework. All these things China has perceived as being positioned against it. So, therefore, this is a very big challenge. Today, when the things are evolving very fast geopolitically, we have to understand that United States is trying for a international, liberal world order. But then there are things that again we need to understand that is United States a reliable geostrategic partners for countries of the world and even its allies, which it believes it is. But then the allies are not finding United States a very reliable geostrategic partner, and that is where China is, occupying that space. So once China is trying to occupy this space, it is engaging in a lot of strategic maneuvers, which becomes challenging for the United States. So today, if you are talking about something that what is a middle path or what could possibly be, leading to US-China rapprochement, I think what could lead to US-China rapprochement is for the United States to understand that it is a multipolar world. United States cannot impose a world order that it wants on other countries. At the same time, we have to also understand that in this multipolar world order, every country has its own, strategic national interest and economic interest. So they have to pursue their own interest as well. So that's very important.
Sir, very rightly you mentioned about the multipolar world. Given that US had its dominance in the unipolar world, so now do you think that there would be a tripartite power game between US, India, and China in a multipolar world?
See, the idea is that what are we looking at? I mean, if you have included India in this conversation, let me talk about it very clearly that what are we trying to do? We are following a path of strategic autonomy. Neither we want to be inclined toward United States, nor we want to be inclined toward China. The idea is that we have to meet our own national and economic interest. And our national interest is not something that only the US can meet or align with it, or only China can align with it. Today, what we are doing for a lot of strategic issues, we are actually relying more on United States. For trade, we are relying on United States as well as China, right? So the idea is again very important that what could be India's, stand in this way. So our policy that our government is following, led by Prime Minister Modi, I think strategic autonomy is the key to India's strategy to navigate in the Indo-Pacific as well as the global geopolitical architecture.
Thank you so much, sir, for your intriguing answer. Now, I want to understand a little bit more because I'm very curious and inquisitive to learn from you. The economic aspect of the China de-risking policy, could you think that it could be more than a political slogan?
I think, yeah, this is very interesting because I think decoupling was one thing that came just after the COVID time, where every country was talking about how to reduce their dependence on Chinese supply chains. So that issue was already there, but then decoupling, I think, miserably failed because it was absolutely not possible to decouple with China even after the COVID pandemic recovery, because most countries started relying during the recovery, while they wanted to recover during the pandemic. They realized that China, of course, was a bigger, economic partner for them as compared to the United States. So then came the issue of de-risking. Now, de-risking is something like, okay, we talk about supply chain resilience, we talk about moving certain, part of the supply chain out of China. Countries started giving incentives to their companies to move out of China. But then de-risking, I think, is not a short-term game. I mean, de-risking has to be a long-term strategy. Countries cannot even look at the countries whom the government wanted to move out of China, but they didn't. I mean, some gave a deadline of like we'll move out in 2026. Some says we'll move out in 27. So they didn't, because it has to be a long term strategy. Now at the same time, where we have things like RCEP coming up, in RCEP, which China is already, they signed in October 2020. We have other mega regional groups like the TPP, CPTPP. We have another initiative led by the United States, like the Indo-Pacific Economic Framework, which is setting standards and trying to set a rule of the game. But then the rules of the game have already been set through RCEP and TPP. So the idea is that how does IPF also navigate through it? That also a big challenge. So I think overall, what we can say that. The role of the United States is very crucial. The way the tariff war has happened, the way President Trump is imposing a tariff war, countries also have to understand at some point of time the US perspective, but US also has to understand the that it is not no longer a very reliable and an indispensable partner for many countries, the position that perhaps it enjoyed some 10, 15, 20 years ago.
So very rightly you talked about the Trump tariff. So again, it's a very prominent issue because Trump is saying one thing at one end or the other end. So do you think that the Trump tariff would alter the zero-sum game between countries like China and India, and does it have a repercussion on both these economies?
I think primarily when we are talking about India-China context, I don't think Trump tariff is a big issue between India and China managing their own relationship, bilateral, right? So I don't think Trump tariff would be a very big thing. The issue is that India and China has on and off. If you want to look at like 2017, 2018, 2019, look at these years, right? We remain milder on Quad. Quad gradually started looking at non-traditional security issues, not purely security issues. Also, we engage in informal summits. We had in 2018 the informal summit between Prime Minister Modi and President Xi Jinping in Wuhan. In 2019, we had the second informal summit which was held. So and 2017, 18, they were the times when US was already waging a trade war, but still we were engaging with China. So the idea is that I think it's very important that we segregate the understanding of India-China bilateral relations from the issue of imposition of Trump tariff. Because Trump tariff is totally a blanket thing which has come up today. We already have been engaging with China. Today also we want to engage with China. Yes. And today China is, very well, looking toward us that we should engage with China more in terms of trade.
So, as you rightly said, so Trump tariffs, Trump had imposed tariffs on certain sectors in India. So, what do you think that India should use it as a stance or strategy to deal with the tariff? Because it is very comprehensive in terms of, does it going to incur a loss on its economy?
See, the tariff already has put a cost on all countries, including India. There is absolutely no doubt about that. The Trump tariff I am talking about, it has put a cost on every country, right? And countries have been on and off trying to navigate through these tariff-related challenges. But then, how do you navigate through the tariff-related challenges is a very crucial issue. I can say for India, like we cannot straight away hit on the tariff. What we need to do is we need to strengthen things like one, we talk about Atmanirbhar Bharat and the Make in India policy. When we are able to enhance our own domestic productive capacity, through the make Atmanirbhar Bharat and Make in India, once our domestic productive capacity increases, our manufacturing base increases, we have other markets to explore. Why the United States? I mean, we have an Act East policy where we can start, trading more toward the ASEAN. We can start engaging with, China. Of course, we are engaging Africa and elsewhere, and Middle East. So the idea is that we cannot just be relying on that particular thing. Secondly, what we need to do, I think, besides this domestic productive capacity, we also need to look at three things I will talk about. One is that we need to have a comprehensive discussion on trade with the United States to find out a trade comprehensive FTA. On and off, yes, it's absolutely okay that we are talking about having a mini trade deal or something like a trade deal to overcome the impact of Trump tariff today. But then the issues between United States and India, as the US perceives, is on trade issues, is deep rooted and long standing. So we need to look at something like a comprehensive FTA, and which will give us a bargaining time as well. I mean, FTA doesn't happen today. Yeah. It takes like 2 years, 3 years of negotiation on very crucial and critical issues of trade with the United States, and then we can do it. So the second point that I wanted to talk about is that we also need to look at whether explore such possibilities that if we can join a mega regional bloc. We are, of course, talking about going for bilateral FTAs, signing bilateral FTAs. But then bilateral FTAs have their own limitations. Mega regionals today, like RCEP and CPTPP, are setting the rules of the game. So, do we actually intend to be part of that? And I think we must. And finally, I want to say one more thing, which would be, I mean, if we announce today that we want to join the RCEP, it will be really difficult for the United States to even impose tariff on us. And lastly, I think that we should go for an India-led free trade agreement in the Indian Ocean rim, which is very, very important, because we have RCEP, we have CPTPP. If at all we do not intend to join any of them at this time, at least we should now try to have a mobilize, countries in the almost 20 countries are there, to mobilize, negotiations for a India-led free trade agreement in the Indian Ocean ring.
So very amazingly, you pointed out the role of mega regionals and the comprehensive FTA. So this was one perspective that I heard from you on India. So now I want to talk a little and focus a little more on your expertise, which is China. That does China need a positive approach with India to balance its strategic orientation with the United States? What do you think on that?
Of course. I mean, one thing is very clear, that China is not detached with the United States. Unlike the perception that we have in popular, media representations and all, that China is like totally detached from the United States and there's something war and conflict, might happen, all these things. But the point is that China also understands that United States is a big economy. It is a big partner of China, and China continues to collaborate with the United States. So that is why I was saying that when we are talking about India-China issues, we would rather abstain from bringing the United States into picture, because US would not like to, China would not like to improve relations with India because of the United States, nor would India want to improve relationship with China because of the United States. Because India and China both are neighbors, and as a neighbors, there are strategic issues, strategic challenges which the two countries face, and they need to understand their own challenges, and they need to overcome their own challenges, in fact, for improvement in the bilateral relations.
So, sir, very rightly you pointed out the China's perspective. Now, we talked about the Trump tariff, United States. Now, what do you think about, if we come to India-China relations, what could be the potential future aspects? We have had a lot in the history between India-China, right from Galwan Valley clash in the 2020s, skirmishes, border skirmishes, and also the Indian government banning Chinese apps. So what do you think the potential aspects of their future cooperation in the relationship between the two countries?
I think one thing that has largely been talked about in context of India and China is that how do we look toward convergences instead of divergences, right? So if you are looking at the divergences, primarily that you mentioned about LAC dispute and other things, if you look at those type of border disputes, so we have a mechanism for that, which is called WMCC. So several rounds of meetings of the WMCC between India and China related to the border dispute has already happened and is still going on. So there is already one mechanism in place. Second, there are mechanisms, for example, like diplomatic channels and diplomatic channels through which India and China are already cooperating. At the same time, I will suggest that what we now need to do, India and China must look at some of the convergences, because the trade is massive, and we cannot do away with that immediately. So that dependence, of course, we want to increase our own domestic capacity. That is a good thing, but then it cannot immediately replace our trade relations with China. So we have to look it at in this way. So what we need to do is, I think one of the best thing that has happened in the China policy is the informal summit between Prime Minister Modi and President Xi Jinping. That informal summit mechanism must be revived. We need a third informal summit now. Two have been held, now we need a third one, because that informal summit actually brings the two leaders together, where they talk about direct pragmatic solutions, instead of going through a long diplomatic channel. Once the leaders are there, at least they can look a very broader picture. They can look the critical issues and try to resolve those critical issues, and lead a way trajectory of growth for India-China relations. So I think India-China cooperation is very important today. I mean, during the time when the Trump tariff is there and a lot of geopolitical issues, maneuvering which is happening, lot of conflicts happening, whether you talk in the Middle East or Russia, Ukraine. In the Middle East, we have seen the Gaza peace plan come, but then it's again seems to be too volatile in that way. So the point is that India-China cooperation is going to redefine the idea of an Asian integration, the idea of an Asian what we call as identity, and that is very critical.
So, just last question, because after hearing your detailed perspectives, I'm just so engrossed. So, one final question to you is that you talked about the pragmatic solutions between India and China. Do you think that this relationship will actually have a positive approach? Because if you see, most of these the countries have been sharing, after having the pragmatic outcomes, also they have been sharing the negative sentiments for one another. So, how do you think this could be addressed?
See, when you are neighbors, the popular perceptions and neighbors, and then there have been some adverse, issues like border disputes, which is already happened. So popular perceptions will be there. There is absolutely no doubt about it. But then it is up to the government, up to the leadership, that everyone, and as we clearly understand today, see, we are very clear about it that we don't want to detach with China. That's, we are very clear about it. So the idea is that we need to become, look at those type of convergences, and for divergences, we need diplomatic mechanisms, things like WMCC, which is already working. So it's a very positive environment need to be developed to look at issues where we converge more and more, and we engage in such type of dialogues like track to diplomacies and all those things, which is very helpful in strengthening India-China relations in times to come.
Thank you so much, sir, for sparing your valuable time. It was indeed a pleasure to interact with you, and I really thoroughly enjoyed the intellectual conversation with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.